That will be nothing new, the Duke added sardonically. It concerns Richard. I might have guessed that. He is making a fool of himself. That is certainly nothing unusual. This time it is rather more serious. He has asked Delyth Maulden to marry him, and she has accepted. It was obvious that the Duke was surprised from the way he stiffened, and his eyes were hard as he exclaimed, I always knew Richard was a fool, but not such a damned fool as to marry Delyth Maulden. He is too good a catch for her to let him go, the Major said simply. He fiddled with the stem of his glass as he went on. You know, ever since Gosport refused to marry her, she has been trying to find somebody of importance to take his place. Gosport's mother managed to save him at the very last moment, the Duke said. She had almost got him to the church door. There was silence, as both men were thinking of the weak, good-humoured young Marquis of Gosport, who had cast himself and his title at the feet of the most acclaimed and certainly the most cunning beauty in London. He had nearly been saddled with her for the rest of his life. Lady Delyth Maulden, daughter of the dissolute and impoverished Duke of Hull, had burst upon the social world 5 years earlier. There was no doubt that she was exceedingly beautiful, and the bucks and beaux of St. James's, always ready to be captivated by a fresh and lovely face, had declared her an incomparable, and drunk her health in even deeper draughts than was usual. It was, of course, the great hostesses who had discovered first that Lady Delyth was as dissolute as her father, with morals which, even in an immoral age, could not be accepted without protest. She took lover after lover, and although she might have attempted to keep her amours discreet, regular wagers were soon laid at White's Club as to who would be the next victim. The Duke had heard that his young cousin, heir presumptive Richard Wood, was infatuated, but he had in fact paid little attention to the gossip. It would do the boy no harm, he thought, to learn the hard way that Delyth would extract every penny he possessed, and a great deal he did not possess, from his pocket. If he was disillusioned in the process, it would doubtless make him more particular next time as to where he cast his heart. But that Delyth would plan to marry the boy had never entered his mind, and now he realised that he had been almost as foolish as his heir. Of course Delyth Maulden would consider Richard a good catch, seeing that it was known by everybody that the Duke had said not once but a dozen times that he had no intention of marrying. It had been such a sensational statement from a man of such high rank that it was impossible for people not to be curious as to why he intended to stay a bachelor, when, according to all the rules and traditions of the nobility, he should be anxious to have a son. The Duke did nothing to assuage their curiosity. He merely said he had no wish to take a wife, and when he was dead, which would not be for a great many years, Richard would undoubtedly take his place most admirably. Nobody could quite believe that he would remain resolute in such a contention. Yet 4 years had elapsed since he had inherited the title, and his love affairs, and there were a great number of them, were always conducted with lovely, sophisticated women who invariably had husbands. The Duke, however, had a great pride of family. He had not expected, when he was young, ever to inherit the title, as his father had been a second son, and his uncle had a son and heir, and every prospect of being able to add to his family as the years passed. But several strange quirks of fate, accidents and illness, swept the Duke into the seat of power when he least expected it. Although his private life, which he considered his own, was slightly reprehensible, his public appearance upheld all the dignity and consequence of his position. He fulfilled his duties punctiliously and with a formality that at times could be quite awe-inspiring. Therefore, the idea that somebody like Lady Delyth Maulden should become the Duchess of Kingswood and chatelaine of the mansion in which they were now sitting was more of a shock than even his friend Bevil Haverington had envisaged. "Damn it all!" he cried aloud. "Why marriage?" "Delyth has seen to that. As I told you, Richard is infatuated to the point where he would try to give her the moon and the stars should she ask for them." The Duke's lips tightened. "When did you hear this?" "I was told it last night, and thought I had better keep the information from you until we could discuss it quietly and alone." "What is there to discuss?" the Duke asked savagely. "Delyth Maulden has extracted a promise of marriage from Richard, and she will not let him go back on his word." "I'm afraid not," Major Haverington agreed. The Duke sat almost like a statue, and his friend knew what he was thinking. He had seen the same expression on his face when they were facing the enemy, outnumbered and strategically in an impossible position. And yet dozens of times in such